You have tried the sprays, you have tried the treatments, and the pests keep coming back. Anyway, here is what most gardeners never find out. The problem is not what you are putting in your garden, it is what you are not planting in it. There are 7 plants that pests genuinely hate. Not because of folklore, not because of old gardening myths, but because of real chemistry that researchers have studied, tested, and confirmed. And one plant near the end of this list is the actual source of compounds that insecticide companies extract and sell in bottles. You can grow it yourself. Here are 7 plants that kill and repel aphids, whiteflies, ants, mealybugs, caterpillars, spider mitites, thrips, and more naturally. This is not vague gardening advice. Every plant on this list comes with the real science, the real mistakes most gardeners make, and exactly how to use it for maximum protection. If you have been losing plants to pests and nothing seems to work, this video was made for you. Before we get into the list, 2 things I want you to watch for. Plant number 4 is one of the most misused companion plants in any garden. Most gardeners place it in completely the wrong spot and get almost no protection from it at all. I will show you exactly how to fix that, and plant number 7 will surprise you. Most people think of it as a decorative flower. What it actually produces inside its petals is something that changed the entire natural pesticide industry. Stay with me. If you are finding this useful, go ahead and subscribe, and hit the bell. We put out practical gardening content every week and you do not want to miss what is coming. If you are watching from the United States, hit the hype button on this video. It costs you nothing, and it genuinely helps this channel reach more gardeners who need this information. Now let us get into the list. For each plant, I am going to tell you what most gardeners miss, why it actually works at the science level, and exactly how to use it in your garden for maximum pest protection. No filler, no vague advice. Let us go. Plant number 1, marigold. Here is something most gardeners do not know about marigolds. The ones sold at most garden centers, the big fluffy French and African varieties, are beautiful, but they are not the most powerful pest-trailing marigolds you can grow. The most powerful variety is a scrappy, small flowered type, sometimes called Mexican marold or tall marigold. It grows tall. It smells strong, almost aggressively so, and it has been used in South American farming for generations as a living pesticide. Farmers planted entire rows of it, not for beauty but as a chemical barrier. In parts of East Africa, this same marold has been studied as a tool against a parasitic weed that destroys staple crops because its root secretions suppress weed germination underground. And here is where things get interesting. Even the common French marold does something that surprises most gardeners when they find out. Most gardeners plant marolds as a border decoration. They put them around the edge of the garden, stand back, and wonder why the aphids are still on their tomatoes. Here is the mistake. Distance. Marigolds need to be interplanted. That means woven throughout your beds, close to the plants you are protecting, not surrounding the garden like a decorative frame. Companion planting research from Rothamsted Research in the United Kingdom showed that French marigolds planted among tomato plants, not around them, reduced whitefly population significantly. The mechanism was disruption of host-finding behavior. Whiteflies use visual and chemicals to locate their preferred plants. The marigold's volatile compounds interfere with those signals. Plant marigolds 3 to 5 feet away, and the effect drops dramatically. That detail matters more than most people realize. Marigolds produce a group of compounds called thiophynes. These are sulfur-containing chemicals concentrated in their roots, leaves, and flowers. And they are toxic to a range of soil organisms, including one of the most destructive soil pests a gardener can face: the root, not neodie. This pest invades plant roots, causes galls, stunts growth, and can devastate tomatoes, peppers, and carrots. Marigold roots release compounds toxic to nemode lavi. Research has shown that planting marolds densely for a full season, then tilling them into the soil, can suppress nemode populations for the following growing season. That means marolds are not just protecting your plants above ground. They are cleaning your soil for next year. Above ground, the strong scent masks the chemical signature of nearby plants, making it harder for flying pests like whiteflies, aphids, and thrips to locate their targets. Marigolds also attract hoverflies and parasitic wasps, beneficial insects that prey directly on aphids and caterpillar eggs. Marigolds have been called a gardener's best friend for so long that most people stopped taking that seriously. They assumed it was folklore. It is not. It is biology. When you start interplanting them properly, not decorating with them but using them, your garden starts behaving differently. Fewer mystery infestations, healthier roots at the end of the season, more beneficial insects showing up on their own. It is one of the most satisfying shifts you can make because it costs almost nothing. How to use them? Plant marigolds every 12 to 18 inches throughout your vegetable beds, not just at the edges. They grow best in full sun with at least 6 hours of light per day. Water moderately. They are drought-tolerant once established, and overwatering reduces both flower production and scent output. For nemode suppression, grow a dense planting for a full season until the plant's into the soil before winter. French marigold works well for above-ground pest disruption. If you can source the taller, stronger-smelling variety, sometimes called Mexican marold, use that for maximum soil and scent impact. They also work very well in containers. Place pots near doors, windows, or beside potted tomatoes, and you will notice the difference. Plant number 2, basil. Basil has one of the most complex chemical profiles of any common kitchen herb. Most people grow it for cooking. What they do not realize is that the same compounds that make basil smell extraordinary to us are neurologically disorienting to insects. Not mildly unpleasant, actually disorienting. Certain pests land near basil, detect the volatile output, and redirect. Their ability to locate and assess host plants breaks down completely. There is also something most gardeners never hear about basil. Different varieties have meaningfully different levels of pest protection. The basil you find in grocery stores has been bred for flavor and yield. Some traditional varieties are significantly more potent as pest deterrents. The most common mistake with basil as a companion plant is treating it like a passive presence. Planting it once and walking away. Here is the problem. Basil's volatile output is highest when the plant is actively growing, warm, and not yet flowering. The moment basil bolts, meaning when it sends up its flower spike, the plant's energy shifts. Volatile production changes. Pest deterrence weakens. The practical fix is simple. Pinch your basil constantly. Remove flower heads the moment they appear. This keeps the plant in a vegetative state, maximizes leaf production, and keeps volatile output high throughout the entire growing season. Gardeners who do this consistently report dramatically better performance from basil as a companion plant compared to those who let it go to flower. And here is something worth knowing. Crushing or brushing basil leaves releases a burst of volatiles into the immediate air. In small spaces or greenhouses, this can serve as a brief chemical pulse that disorients flying pests. Basil produces a rich blend of volatile compounds, primarily linol eugenol estragol, and one called 18-cineol. Research published in agricultural entomology journals has shown that linalool specifically has repellent effects on aphids, thrips, and spider mites. It disrupts the olfactory receptors insects use to locate food sources and mates. Eugenol has shown direct insecticidal activity against certain mite species at concentrated levels. The compound astragol present in higher levels in some basil varieties is particularly effective against whiteflies. Basil also repels mosquitoes. Studies testing basil essential oil against the mosquito species that transmits den fever found repellency rates comparable to some synthetic repellents at sufficient concentrations. These are evolved chemical defenses, and they work across many different insect nervous systems. What I find most interesting about basil is that it is probably already in your garden or in your kitchen window, and it is already doing less than it could. Moving it next to your tomatoes, keeping it pinched, growing a few more plants than you think you need. These are tiny changes that compound over an anti-growing season. You get the herbs, you get the pest protection, and you spend less time losing plants to infestations you never saw coming. How to use it? Plant basil 12 inches apart directly among tomatoes and peppers. It needs full sun, at least 6 to 8 hours per day. Less sun means less volatile production, which means less protection. Keep soil consistently moist. Basil wilts fast and heat-stressed plants bolt faster, which is exactly what you are trying to avoid. Pinch flower heads weekly. This is the single most important maintenance step for keeping basil working as a companion plant. For stronger pest deterrents, look for Thai basil or holy basil. These varieties tend to have higher eugenol content and stronger pest deterrents overall. Genovese basil excels in the kitchen, but is slightly less potent as a companion. Plant number 3. Mint. Mint might be the most aggressive plant on this list, and that aggression is exactly what makes it useful. Left unchecked in a garden bed, mint spreads by underground runners and can take over an entire raised bed within 2 seasons. Most gardeners learn this the hard way. But that aggressive underground growth is actually part of what makes mint so potent as a pest deterrent. The entire plant, roots, stems, and leaves is saturated with menthol and related compounds, and it pushes those compounds into the surrounding soil and air constantly. There is a farming tradition in parts of Europe where mint was planted along the edges of granaries, not for the herb to repel rodents and insects from stored food. The Romans used it. Medieval herb gardens always included it. This is not new information. It is very old information that modern gardeners tend to forget. Mint's biggest problem in the garden is not its smell. It is its ambition. The solution most experienced gardeners use is container control. Plant mint in a pot, then sink the pot into the ground, or place it directly beside vulnerable plants. The container restricts root spread while allowing the plant to grow, produce volatile output, and do its job as a deterrent. You get all the benefit without the takeover. Now, here is the surprising part. Mint works differently depending on the pest. For aphids, whiteflies, and fluffy beetles, the scent disruption is the primary mechanism for ants, and mint is particularly effective against ants. The menthol concentration at ground level interferes with the pheromone trails ants use to navigate. Break a mint trail by scattering a handful of bruised fresh mint leaves along the path, and the foraging ants lose their route completely. This is a simple, practical trick that works surprisingly well. Mint's primary active compound is menthol. This is a cyclic tar-pine alcohol that triggers cold receptors in insect sensory systems. Even at normal outdoor temperatures for insects, this creates a chemical confusion response. Beyond menthol, mint produces polygon, menthol, carvacrol, and limonene. This volatile blend registers as threatening to a wide range of insects. Polygon specifically has demonstrated insecticidal properties against aphids and spider mites in direct contact studies. Research into mint's effect on ants has shown that peppermint oil disrupts forager communication by masking pheromone signals. Field applications of peppermint-based barriers are used in integrated pest management programs as ant deterrents. Mint also attracts predatory wasps and hoverflies when it flowers, making it a dual-action plant that both repels pests and draws their natural enemies. Mint is one of those plants that gives you more than you expect. You grow it for tea, for cooking, maybe for summer drinks, and then you realize it has been quietly keeping aphids off your nearby plants and breaking up ant trails that would have led to mealybug colonies on your squash. It is not glamorous pest control. It is just deeply practical. And once you start using it strategically in containers placed near vulnerable plants, it becomes one of those things you cannot imagine the garden without. How to use it? Grow mint in a 6 to 8 inch pot. Sink the pot into the soil or place it beside vulnerable plants. Repot every 1 to 2 seasons to prevent the roots from becoming bound. Mint grows well from partial to full sun and tolerates more shade than most herbs. Keep the soil consistently moist. Mint wilts quickly and does not recover well from drought stress. For ant control, scatter bruised fresh mint leaves along ant trails or entry points. Reapply after rain. Peppermint has the highest menthol content and strongest pest deterrents. Spearmint and chocolate mint are milder but still effective. Harvest mint regularly. Frequent harvesting keeps plants bushy and maximizes volatile output throughout the season. Plant number 4, lemongrass. Lemongrass is the plant on this list that gets the most underestimated and the most misused, which is exactly what I mentioned at the start of this video. Here is a fact that completely changes how you think about it. The compound that gives lemongrass its distinctive citrus scent is called citral, and citral is the same compound that is extracted and used commercially in natural insect repellents and in the formulation of insecticide sprays. When you see citronella listed in natural pest products, you are often looking at a citridor-derived compound, and lemongrass produces citral in concentrations higher than almost any other cultivated plant. The irony is that most gardeners who grow lemongrass keep it in a pot on the patio as a decorative ornamental or harvest it entirely for cooking, while their vegetable beds 20 feet away are getting hit by aphids and spider mites. And this is where things get interesting. Lemongrass is a large, clumping grass. It can reach 4 to 5 feet tall in a warm season, and most gardeners either grow too little of it or position it in completely the wrong place. The key placement mistake is putting lemongrass at the edges of the property as a barrier rather than near the plants that actually need protection. The volatile compounds dissipate quickly in open air. For maximum effect, lemongrass needs to be within 5 to 8 feet of your target plants, ideally positioned upwind of the prevailing breeze so the volatile compounds drift through the growing area. In warm climates, lemongrass is perennial and will grow into a large, permanent clump year after year. In cooler zones, it is grown as an annual or brought indoors before frost. Either way, even a single large plant produces enough volatile output to meaningfully affect pests in its immediate environment throughout the season. Lemongrass produces 3 primary volatile compounds: citral, which is actually a mixture of 2 related compounds called geraniol and neryl geraniol, and myrcene. Citral has been extensively studied as an insect repellent and shows activity against a broad range of species, including mosquitoes, aphids, thrips, and spider mites. Its mechanism involves interference with the insect's olfactory detection system, masking the chemical profiles of nearby host plants. At higher concentrations, it also shows direct contact insecticidal activity. Geraniol has demonstrated repellency against whiteflies and has been studied for use against the Vir mite in beekeeping. That alone should give you a sense of how chemically potent this compound actually is. A study published in an industrial crops research journal found lemongrass essential oil effective against multiple stored product pest species at concentration achievable in real field conditions. There is something genuinely satisfying about a plant this large and dramatic that is also pulling its weight as pest management. Lemongrass earns its space in 2 directions: as a kitchen ingredient in soups, teas, and marinades, and as a living chemical barrier around your most vulnerable plants. Once you understand what citral actually does, you stop looking at lemongrass as decoration. It becomes one of your most strategic planting decisions: how to use it. One large lemongrass clump provides meaningful coverage for a 4 to 5 ti area. Do not underplant. Bigger is always better with lemongrass. Position it within 5 to 8 feet of your target plants and try to place it upwind of the prevailing breeze to maximize volatile dispersal. Lemongrass needs full sun and heat to thrive and produce high volatile output. Water deeply but infrequently once established. It is drought tolerant but grows faster with consistent moisture. In zones 9 through 11, grow it as a perennial. In zone 8 and below, grow it as an annual or pot it up and bring it indoors before frost. If you are growing in containers, use a pot of at least 15 gallons. Smaller pots restrict growth and reduce volatile output significantly. Remove and use outer stalks regularly. This stimulates new growth and keeps the plant actively producing volatiles throughout the season. We are halfway through, and before we get into the second half of the list, I want to mention something quickly. If you want a companion planting reference you can actually use in the garden and not just watch once and forget, I have put together a free pest management and companion planting guide that goes deeper on the plant spacing and seasonal strategies we cover here. The link is in the description below. No email required. Just download it and use it. Now, the next 3 plants are where this list gets genuinely surprising. One of them works underground in your soil in a way most gardeners have never heard of, and one of them has been studied for insect control at the university research level in ways that would surprise most home gardeners. Let us keep going. Plant number 5, rosemary. Rosemary is one of the toughest plants you can grow, and toughness, it turns out, comes with chemical weapons. Here is something worth knowing. Rosemary was historically used not just as a culinary herb, but as a fumigant. Medieval households burned rosemary branches indoors to purify air and repel insects. Ships carrying preserved food used rosemary as part of their anti-pest strategy. This was not superstition. It was working chemistry discovered through census rise of practical observation. Modern research has confirmed what those old-world gardeners knew. Rosemary's volatile output is persistently high, long-lasting and effective against a wider range of pests than most people realize, which explains why so many gardeners get this wrong by treating rosemary as only a kitchen herb and never letting it near the vegetable bed. Most gardeners do not think of rosemary as a companion plant at all. They grow it in a separate herb, harvest it occasionally, and never connect it to what is happening in the vegetable bed. The overlooked value is this: rosemary is evergreen in mild climates. That means its volatile output continues year-round, including in early spring when young transplants are most vulnerable to the first wave of aphid and thrips emergence. There is also a pruning effect worth knowing about. Freshly pruned rosemary releases a concentrated burst of volatile compounds. Some gardeners deliberately place fresh rosemary prunings among cabbage plants, tomato seedlings, or around the base of fruit trees as a short-term aromatic deterrent right after a pruning session. It is low effort, and it is measurably effective for several hours to a full day. Rosemary produces a complex volatile blend. The main compounds are eucalyptal, camphor, alpha-pinene, and borneol. Eucalyptol is one of the most studied natural insect deterrents in the scientific literature. It has demonstrated repellency against aphids, whiteflies, spider mitites, thrips, and the larvae of several moth species. Its mechanisms is multi-layered. It acts as an alactory disruptor masking host plant cues, and at higher concentrations it shows neurotoxic activity against insect nervous systems by inhibiting a key enzyme. The same enzyme targeted by organophosphate pesticides, but through a far less toxic plant-derived pathway. Camphor, the second major volatile, enhances the repellent effect and extends the range at which insects detect and avoid the chemical signal. Research at the University of Thessaly demonstrated rosemary essential oil's effectiveness against the two-spotted spider mite, one of the most damaging and pesticide-resistant pests in any garden. Rosemary is the plant that rewards you for simply growing it well. The better your rosemary grows, the more sun it gets, the more you prune it, the bigger the bush, the harder it is working for the rest of your garden. It is one of the few plants where the cultivation goals for the herb and the companion planting goals are exactly the same. Grow it big, keep it pruned, use it in the kitchen, and let it work quietly in the background for every vulnerable plant nearby. How to use it. One established rosemary bush provides meaningful coverage for a 6 to 8 foot radius. Plant it near vulnerable picas, beans, carrots, and tomatoes. Full sun is essential. Rosemary grown in shade produces fewer volatiles and becomes more disease-prone over time. Water sparingly once established. Rosemary has excellent drought tolerance, and overwatering is the primary reason most rosemary plants die. Use well-drained soil, slightly alkaline if possible. Raised beds and containers both work well. Prune regularly to encourage dense growth and fresh volatile-rich foliage. Do not cut into old woody growth. In zones 7 and above, rosemary is evergreen. Leave it in place for year-round protection. In colder zones, pot it up and overwinter it indoors. And after any pruning session, place the trimmings directly among your seedlings or transplants as an immediate short-term pest deterrent. Plant number 6, Nestium. Nasturtium is the most strategically interesting plant on this list because it works in two completely opposite ways, and most gardeners only know about one of them. Everyone knows nersiums are beautiful. Fewer people know they repel certain pests, but almost no one knows about the trap crop strategy, and it is one of the most powerful passive pest management tools in companion planting. Here is how it works. Anthuriums are so attractive to aphids, particularly black bean aphids and cabbage aphids, that a well-placed nersium planting will pull aphid colonists and off your valued plants and concentrate them in one location. The anthurium sacrifices itself, and in doing so, it becomes both a pest monitor and a containment zone. You see the problem, you know exactly where it is, and you can deal with it directly. Spray those plants with water, introduce ladybugs, or remove the leaves entirely without ever touching your vegetables. Now here is the surprising part. The trap crop strategy only works if you place nersiums intentionally near your main plants, but slightly away from them in a position where the aphids will find the anthuriums first. The most common mistake is planting nersiums directly among vegetables. When you do that, aphid colonies building on the anthuriums can migrate to adjacent plants too easily. The correct approach is to plant netariums at the end of rows or in a separate sacrificial cluster a few feet from your main beds. The goal is controlled pest attraction, not uncontrolled pest spread. Nersiums also repel whiteflies, squash bugs, and woolly aphids from non-nesters plants. The repellent compounds are chemically different from the attractant mechanism. This is a plant working in two directions simultaneously, which is genuinely unusual. Nersiums produce a glucosinolate compound. When the plant tissue is damaged, this compound breaks down into benzyl isocyanate. This is a powerful chemical irritant to many insects and contributes to anthurium's repellent effect on squash bugs and whiteflies. At the same time, anthuriums produce volatile compounds that attract aphids. This mechanism is thought to have evolved as a way the plant manipulates pest behavior to its own advantage. Drawing pests away from neighboring plants it grows alongside in wild habitats. The flowers attract pollinators, particularly bumblebees, and the open blooms also attract predatory insects, including ground beetles, which are generalist predators of many soft-bodied garden pests. And here is something practical worth knowing. Anthurium leaves are edible, peppery, and nutritious. Even a sacrificed plant pulled from the garden at peak aphid infestation can be composted, or the aphid-free leaves can be eaten, or the whole plant can be used as a green mulch. Nothing goes to waste. What I love about nersiums is that they turn a pest problem into information. When aphids hit your notorium patch, you do not panic. You already knew where they would go. You planned for it. You can see the problem, assess it, and handle it without ever losing a tomato or a pepper plant. That shift from reactive to proactive is one of the most satisfying things about intentional companion planting. And nersiums make that shift easy to practice how to use them. Plant netariums in clusters 3 to 5 feet from your main vegetable beds, not directly among them. The distance is what makes the trap crop strategy work. They grow well in full sun to partial shade. More sun means more flowers and stronger volatile production. Water sparingly. Nersiums actually bloom better in poor dry soil. Overwatering and over-fertilizing causes lush leaves, but very few flowers, which reduces both their attractant and repellent value. Do not add fertilizer. Rich soil redirects the plant's energy to foliage, reducing everything that makes notoriums useful as companions. Check your nasturtium plants regularly. A heavy aphid infestation can be hosed off with water, treated with insecticidal soap, or the plant can simply be removed and composted. That is the strategy working exactly as intended. In mild climates, anthuriums self-seed prolifically. Let some plants go to seed for a naturalized, self-maintaining trap crop that comes back on its own every season. Plant number 7. Chrysanthemum. This is the plant I have been building toward since the beginning of this video. Most people think of chrysanthemums as a fall flower, a decoration, something you put on the porch in October and compost in November. That perception is so far from the truth that it almost seems intentional. Here is the truth. A specific variety of chrysanthemum, the Dalmatian chrysanthemum, is the source of pythene, one of the most widely used natural insecticides in the world. The pythine extracted from chrysanthemum flowers is the active ingredient in hundreds of commercial organic and conventional pesticide products. It is used in agriculture, in food storage, in veterinary treatments, in mosquito control programs. The entire global market for natural pythine, worth hundreds of millions of dollars annually, originates from this flower, and you can grow it yourself. Most gardeners do not know there is a difference between ornamental chrysanthemums and the Dalmatian chrysanthemum. Garden centers often sell both under the general label of mums, but ornamental varieties bred for autumn color have been selected for flower appearance, not pythine content. Their pest deterrence value is minimal compared to the Dalmatian variety. If you want the real thing, you need to source the Dalmatian chrysanthemum specifically. It looks like a daisy, simple white flowers with yellow centers. It is far less visually dramatic than ornamental mums. But the chemistry is in a completely different league. And here is the second thing most gardeners miss. Chrysanthemum flowers can be used directly as a garden spray when steeped in water. Soak dried chrysanthemum flowers for 24 to 48 hours. Strain the liquid and apply it directly to plants. This is a form of pythine extract that has been used in traditional farming for centuries in parts of Asia and the Balkans. Pythines are a class of 6 related compounds produced inside the flower's glands, particularly concentrated just before the flowers fully open. These compounds work by opening sodium ion channels in insect nerve cells, causing repetitive nerve firing, paralysis, and death. They are effective against an extremely wide range of insects: aphids, whiteflies, thrips, spider mites, caterpillars, beetles, fungus gnats, and more. They also degrade rapidly in sunlight and do not accumulate in soil or food crops. This is why they are approved for use in certified organic production. Research has shown pythine concentrations are highest in freshly opened flowers. That means chrysanthemums in active bloom are producing their maximum chemical output at exactly the moment they look most beautiful. Pythons also repel insects at concentrations lower than those required to kill, meaning that even being near a blooming chrysanthemum patch deters many pest species from landing and feeding in the first place. One important note: pythons are toxic to fish and to bees at direct contact concentrations. When making homemade chrysanthemum spray, apply it in early morning or in the evening when pollutors are less active, and avoid spraying anywhere near ponds or water features. There is something genuinely powerful about growing a plant that the pesticide industry built its entire natural product line around. You are not just growing a flower, you are growing a living chemical factory whose output took researchers decades to synthesize artificially. And even after all that research, many formulations still consider the natural version from the plant more effective in certain applications. That reframes what a flower is. That reframes what a garden is. A garden of plants like these is not just a food source. It is a system, a chemical defense network that took thousands of years of human observation to fully understand, and that you can build in a single growing season. How to use it? Source the Dalmatian chrysanthemum specifically. Look for seed suppliers that specialize in medicinal or companion plants. This is not the mum sold at the garden center in October. Space plants 12 to 18 inches apart. They grow 12 to 24 inches tall and work well both as borders and interplanted throughout beds. Full sun is essential. Perethinin production is highest in highlight conditions. Use well. Drained soil with average fertility. Avoid rich, heavily amended soil. Plants in slightly leaner soil often produce higher concentrations of protective compounds. For homemade spray, soak 100 grams of dried flowers in 1 liter of water for 24 hours. Strain through a cloth. Apply immediately as pythine degrade quickly in light. Spray in early morning or evening only. Do not use near ponds or fish tanks. As a companion plant, position it near any vegetable susceptible to aphids, thrips, or caterpillars. It is particularly effective near brassicas, peppers, and tomatoes. The Dalmatian chrysanthemum is a perennial in most temperate zones. Plant it once, and it returns every season, expanding into a larger clump over time. We spend a lot of time in gardening looking for solutions, the right spray, the right timing, the right product, and sometimes those things help. But what we have been talking about today is something different. It is building a garden that is already solving the problem before the problem arrives. Every plant on this list has been doing something quietly remarkable long before we understood why. Marild sending protective compounds into the soil, basil filling the air with volatiles that disorient flying pests, chrysanthemums producing the same compounds that now appear in bottles on a garden center shelf. These plants evolved these defenses over millions of years. We did not create any of this, we are just finally starting to understand it and to use it on purpose. The garden you are building is not just a place where you grow food, it is a living system. And when you plant intentionally, when you choose companions that protect, repel, attract, and balance, the system starts taking care of itself in ways that go beyond what any spray bottle can do. You do not have to implement all 7 today. Start with 2. Put marigolds among your tomatoes. Put a pot of mint near your most pest-prone plant. Give it a season. Pay attention. The results will tell you more than I can. If this video gave you something genuinely useful, consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you do not miss what is coming next. We cover practical companion planting, natural pest management, and real garden strategy. No filler, no vague advice. If you are in the United States, the hype button is right there on this video. It takes one tap and it genuinely helps this channel reach more gardeners who need this information. And if this video saved a plant you were about to lose to pests, super thanks is always appreciated. It goes directly back into making more content like this. Now tell me in the comments, are you a raised bed grower, a container gardener, or do you work in open ground? Because my next recommendation for you depends completely on the answer. Drop a comment below. Are you a raised bed grower, a container gardener, an open ground grower, or are you just getting started? Tell me which pest gives you the most trouble. I read every single,